having gone through the Institute class and having some of the social media training and the general media training, I was able to walk into my current job and bring that on my resume. And I know for a fact that my involvement in those professional development opportunities through Farm Bureau it put me in my current position today with the Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin. I mean, I absolutely know that was part of it, and I love what I do to serve our dairy farmers and promote our industry.
Farm Bureau has been involved in the decades-old fight for farm property tax relief. In 1961, the Farm Bureau led the way for the first sales tax of 3 cents for property tax relief. In 1974, Farm Bureau supported a constitutional amendment to the Uniformity Clause to allow farmland to be taxed on its agricultural productive value as farmland. In 1977, the Farmland Preservation Tax Credit Program was created. And Farm Bureau was instrumental in repealing the personal property tax on livestock in 1981. To increase awareness of the need for property tax reform, Farm Bureau started its Stop School Taxes Off Property campaign in 1984. But the most famous legislative battle for Farm Bureau was the oleomargarine law. Farm Bureau opposed the legalized sale of colored oleomargarine in the state. In 1967, the legislature wanted to repeal this law. County Farm Bureau leaders decided to support extension of the law, but fight for a tax on the oleomargarine product with the proceeds for the construction of a new dairy science building on the UW-Madison campus if the law was repealed. The legislature overturned the law, but Farm Bureau succeeded in getting a 5-cent tax on oleomargarine to fund the dairy science building. For a while, the dairy science building was called the oleomargarine building.
I can recall one little issue that started in Fond du Lac County. We had a member on the board that was concerned about the school bus and school bus safety and the oncoming traffic not stopping good enough. So that stop sign that swings out, that was a Farm Bureau idea started in Fond du Lac County.
Well, a year ago, a group of us guys were visiting in the lobby of the hotel, and I saw this lady come up beside us and start visiting with us, and well, she knew we were from Wisconsin. She says, "I think maybe I can tell you guys something special that you might like to know." Boy, I said, "What's that?" Well, she said, "Jordy Nelson is my next door neighbor in Kansas." So got a family, and Jordy raised Angus cattle together, and so it was. See, that's the way we farmers are.
That's the way it is. Yep.
You just always find somebody that you got something in common with.
The history and future of Farm Bureau in Wisconsin has centered on the member and the member's commitment to having an organization run by farmers to do together what they could not accomplish alone. In 1919, the founding year of Farm Bureau's tradition of excellence, farmers in Wisconsin formed a cooperative to represent their interests, market their products, and provide services that reflected their needs. Organizational work was done by farmers in several counties in southeastern Wisconsin. On May 27, 1920, leaders in these counties decided to affiliate with the American Farm Bureau Federation, making Wisconsin the 32nd state farm bureau to join. The first president of this new organization was George Hull of Whitewater, a person largely responsible for much of the early organizational work. It was early in its life that Farm Bureau firmly stated its philosophy on the role of government in agriculture and the organization's place in working for farmers. In response to calls for a wheat strike to improve prices, the Wisconsin Farm Bureau Board on October 29, 1920, declared,
"The Wisconsin Farm Bureau Federation does not endorse strikes as a means of controlling the price of farm products. However, we do insist that if our farmers are to continue producing farm products, they must receive a margin over the cost of production. Also, we believe that every farmer has and should have the right to sell his products at such a time as market demands ensure a reasonable price." Farm Bureau's constructive and positive tone to the wheat strike
immediately set itself apart from other farm groups who were, and still are today, more involved in protest tactics rather than seeking solutions to problems.
We had an individual, his name was Kenneth Wagner, who Kenny got there. He milked probably about 100 cows, drove from Manitowoc, got down there for the board meeting when it started. And as all the rest of us as farmers, when we sit down and you sit down in a comfortable chair, it's fairly easy to doze off. Ken come in like the rest of us did and sat down, and he was there for about 10 minutes. All of a sudden, Ken jumps up and jumps out of his chair. I was not sleeping. And sits back down. You know, there's a roar that most farmers are very able to laugh at themselves. And we were always able to do that. It was very friendly.
Value my Farm Bureau membership because especially as a young man, I was involved on a committee where we went all over the country and talked about cherries and things like that. I really learned a lot from that through Farm Bureau.
The organization's constitution and bylaws were adopted by delegates to the first annual meeting on January 10, 1921. George McCarrow of Pewaukee was Farm Bureau's second president. There were more than 2,000 members from 15 county farm bureaus at the time, paying membership dues of $2.50. In April of 1923, McCarrow resigned and George Hull was re-elected president. In 1924, Orrin Fletcher of Bangor was elected president. Enthusiasm grew for the new farm group, and in 1925, Farm Bureau members expressed an interest in forming county farm supply cooperatives affiliated with the Farm Bureau. As a result, several supply pools were established to provide Wisconsin farmers with some of the basic production supplies needed in their operations.
I was at a Growmark meeting one year. The leadership of Farm Bureau was always invited down to Chicago, and it was a huge event. It was wonderful, good entertainment. They had a man there one year that needed a dummy. So I became his dummy. I couldn't say a word, but every time he pinched my neck, I had to open my mouth. And some of the things he had me saying had everybody in stitches. It was the most hilarious thing. And then, by surprise, they showed it, I believe, I don't know if it was next year at the state annual meeting. And so we had that was by far the biggest laugh that I was ever involved in.
All right, I'll go first. So a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to go to the Washington, D.C. trip for the YFA program. Actually, that's where I met Kelly. Yeah. And did you go on the ghost tour?
No.
Tour? Okay, so
I didn't.
As I've gone on other professional or other trips with family or conferences and things like that, we've done historical ghost walking tours. It's pretty cool to hear about the history of the city, and then also some of the folklore, or maybe the truth if you want to go that route. But I didn't know a lot of people on the trip before we went, but I knew a handful, and so beforehand I was like, who wants to, I was emailing people, who wants to go on this ghost tour? And so by the time we went, about maybe half the group went on the walking ghost tour, and I thought it was pretty cool, but our tour guide was like extra dramatic, almost to the point of where you didn't want to take her seriously. I mean, you kind of take those tours, stories a little seriously. So it was kind of to be kind of like, I don't know, a little amusing to begin with. But there was one story about this like demon cat in the Capitol, and then we were all done and we were laughing and we were heading back to our hotel. And then we go to cross the street to make it back, and there goes a black cat across the street. And we were like, oh. When I was in D.C. a few weeks ago, I was like, that's where I saw the black cat. So, and Jim Holt was on the trip too, or on the tour too. So I was like, hopefully he doesn't think I'm like some nut job.
Farm Bureau placed a great emphasis on the social benefits of working and living on a farm. Farm Bureau made its mark in supporting family and community functions with Farm Bureau bands and choruses. This band, touted as the largest county Farm Bureau band in the state, was from Jefferson County. Farm Bureau women have played an active role in the formation and growth of the organization, and have been instrumental in developing many of the social functions and educational programs that Farm Bureau has supported during the past 75 years. In November 1921, several women from Waukesha County formed the Farm Bureau Ladies Auxiliary Post Number 1. The movement became the first organized Farm Bureau women's program in the country. One of Farm Bureau's early women leaders was Mrs. R.J. Douglas. Her leadership resulted in the creation of the Associated Farm Bureau Women. She was also one of Farm Bureau's first registered lobbyists. In 1947, Farm Bureau women held their first annual leadership conference. The Women's Short Course was held on the University of Wisconsin-Madison campus. In 1954, the Associated Women of Farm Bureau became known as the Farm Bureau Women's Committee.
I've been in the discussion meet for the last 3 years and made it to the final for 2 of those 3 years. And the best part about the discussion meet is you get to meet other people who are active in ag and in different walks of life of ag. So you've got people who are on the producer side, but you also have people who are on the sales side. And everybody just brings a different perspective to that competition. And it's not even about who's going to win in the room, it's about all the ideas that people bring.
Hello, this is Charlie Carnegie from Winnebago County Farm Bureau. One of my most fond memories from Farm Bureau is being in the Institute class. The friends you make, that was numerous years ago, but we're still weekly contact with some of those people. The friendships, the memories, and all the good things we're doing. It's just really one of my best things I've done through Farm Bureau.
Starting in 1926, and for the next 5 years, 4 different presidents were elected. Hugh Harper in 1926, W.G. Patterson in 1927, F.E. Coldren in 1928, and in 1930, Hugh Hemingway of Janesville. In the early years of Farm Bureau, members in several counties received the Wisconsin Farm Bureau News, but there was no statewide Farm Bureau publication for members. A contest was held in 1930 to name the organization's official magazine. The winning entry, Badger Farm Bureau News, was submitted by Clara Thorison from Chilton. She received a $10 gold piece. Badger Farm Bureau News existed as a magazine and later a newspaper until 1985, when it was replaced by the Ag Venture magazine.
So we're here at the American Farm Bureau Annual Convention. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves and tell us how long you've been coming to this convention?
I'm Carl Casper from Menominee, Dunn County, and this is my 45th year of coming to the American Farm Bureau Convention.
I'm Dave Kirschke from St. Croix County. This is my 33rd or 34th convention I've attended.
And why don't you tell us about the first time that you came to the convention? Why did you come?
First time I came to the American Farm Bureau Convention in 1970, I won the state discussion contest, and the national meeting convention that year was in Houston, Texas. And so I went to Houston, Texas to compete in the national contest.
The first year I went, they had a membership campaign. It was in Honolulu, Hawaii, but our county won 5 tickets to go to Hawaii to the convention.
And why do you guys keep coming back?
Oh, the camaraderie of farmers. It's kind of special to talk with farmers from every state in the union, and we all have something in common. Farmers care about each other, and so it's easy for us to visit about things that are going on our farms and at home.
Part of the reason I keep coming is some of the speakers we've heard over the years have been very good and informative. One thing that's been kind of unique is we've heard the President of the United States, I think, 3 or 4 times over the years.
All right, and why don't you guys say congratulations on WFBF and AFBF Centennials?
Congratulations on I thought we'd do it together.
Yeah, it's kind of special that Wisconsin is celebrating their 100th year this year, and this year is American Farm Bureau's 100th year, and so I was watching some of the video, and I've talked to a lot of the national presidents since Mr. Grant was president when I started Allen Grant, and so in California, and so I've shaken every national president's hand since then. It's kind of special. Happy anniversary, American Farm Bureau. This is really special to attend the 100th anniversary of American Farm Bureau Federation.
We're looking forward to celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Wisconsin Farm Bureau at this year's annual meeting.
Hi, I'm Kim Vandenhoven from Brown County. I got involved with Farm Bureau because my husband was a dairy farmer, and I went to one of the meetings and I thought it sounded like fun to join the board, so I did. We've been having a great time meeting a lot of people. I've gotten the chance to do some policy things, such as going to Washington, D.C., meeting with some senators and Congress people. That was really an experience, and I've just learned so much, and I feel like I've really been able to give our side of the story and kind of tell about farming and agriculture here in Brown County. So that's been really, really a good experience, and I feel like it's been really hands-on, and we're making a difference because of Farm Bureau by just voicing and telling our story and the problems we have or solutions we might think would work. And I feel like they really listen because we're Farm Bureau members, and being on the Farm Bureau board, the congressmen kind of take notice and listen to what we have to say. So that's really exciting. Being on the board and working with some of the younger people in our community has been really a great experience. I got to be a judge for the Fairest of the Fair and help decide who was going to have that position this year. So that was really exciting and really a neat experience. It just overall, I think there's just so many, it's so deep how many different things you can do, so you can kind of find your niche and go on down that road. So that's been, it's been a really great experience.
Coming out of the Depression, the demand for farm supplies increased rapidly, and by the mid-1930s, a separate company had to be established to meet the needs of county farm supply cooperatives. In 1935, Farm Bureau members in Dane, Greene, Rock, Sauk, Iowa, Jefferson, Waukesha, and Wood counties, through their county cooperatives, founded the Wisconsin Cooperative Farm Supply Company as a central purchasing and manufacturing agency.
Funny, memorable story. When I was state chair in 2010, and I was bringing up one of the next speakers, I think for lunch or something, and there was a gal that I was introducing, and I was reading through the script, and the script said how she is very active in her local whatever. For some reason I got the word wrong, and I said how she is very attractive in her local. You want to hear 500 young farmers start laughing and me turn as red as a shirt. That's about what happened.
To celebrate Farm Bureau's 20th anniversary, the first Miss Wisconsin Farm Bureau contest was held. And at the annual meeting, Hugh Hemingway was re-elected president, having been elected president at the 10th annual convention. The Wisconsin Farm Bureau welcomed a new president in 1942, Roscoe Smith of Monroe. At the 1943 annual meeting, State Farm Bureau members elected Curtis Hatch of Spring Green as their president. Hatch later became the first Wisconsin president to serve on the American Farm Bureau board. Farmers knew they needed to replenish their soil after the hard years in production for the war. In 1944, the Wisconsin Cooperative Farm Plant Foods was organized for fertilizer procurement, a high priority for farmers. Plants were located in Prairie du Chien, Antigo, Green Bay, Whitewater, and the Twin Cities. Formed in 1948, the Farm Bureau Young People program was created to improve the leadership skills of young farmers and provide them with farm management information to be successful farmers and Farm Bureau members. Today, Farm Bureau young farmers are active leaders in the organization, providing insight with the more seasoned Farm Bureau members. In 1953, the Wisconsin Cooperative Farm Supply and the Wisconsin Cooperative Farm Plant Foods merged into one organization. The new organization was called the Wisconsin Farmco Service Cooperative.
My first interaction with the Farm Bureau was when I got a phone call from someone who I knew of but didn't know well but was respected by my family. And the individual was Carl Casper, who was at that time the county president of the Dunn County Farm Bureau. Been very involved in a lot of things, and I would see him at different events around the county. But one evening, I got this phone call from Carl, and he asked me if I would be interested in being more involved in the Farm Bureau, and invited me to their upcoming evening meeting in a day or two from there. Not knowing Carl really well, or not really knowing Farm Bureau very well at that time, I was kind of intrigued, and so I took him up on his offer, and it's been a few years now since I've been to a few Farm Bureau meetings since then. So,
Farm Bureau stories. There's a lot of them. Many I can tell, many I probably shouldn't. My favorite story is probably 10 years ago. A group of out-of-state landowners were suing a former policyholder of Rural Mutual over the fact that his discharge from his cranberry bog was causing weeds to grow, basically diluting and diminishing the value of their property. So years went by, we battled these out-of-state landowners, and when everything was said and done, we hung our hat on the right to farm law created by Farm Bureau, and we ended up prevailing. He had the right to farm. The best part about that is those out-of-state landowners had to reimburse us all of our legal fees. So it's a great story. It's a story of Farm Bureau, it's a story of Rural Mutual. It's how we came together to protect farming, to show that together we're way better than we are separate.
In 1932, Joseph Schwartz of Spring Green was elected president. Around that time, farmers started to feel the financial strains of the Depression, and Farm Bureau membership hit bottom at 600 families. During this time, farmers of Wisconsin were not satisfied with their insurance coverage, so Farm Bureau members formed the Farm Bureau Mutual Casualty Insurance Company in 1934 as a casualty company insuring only Farm Bureau members. The Rural Mutual Fire Insurance Company was organized in 1947 to provide fire, windstorm, and crop hail insurance. It combined fire and windstorm damage coverage in one policy and offered crop hail insurance. Voting delegates approved plans in June 1949 to form the Rural Security Life Insurance Company, with stock sold to Farm Bureau members. In 1957, the casualty and fire companies merged under the name of Rural Mutual Insurance Company.
There's a lot of different ways that rural supports the Farm Bureau, financially, through resources, people resources here at the insurance company, and just being part of the Farm Bureau family. I think when we look to what's important from an insurance standpoint and within the farm community, there's a lot of commoditization that has gone on in the insurance industry, meaning that a lot of efforts are done online and maybe not with a personal touch. One of the things that, from an insurance standpoint, we will continue to do to support the Farm Bureau and the farmers in the state of Wisconsin is to continue to have a local presence with our agents and with employees, whether it be our adjusters or underwriters, so we continue to have that personal touch in the local communities around the state of Wisconsin.
Well, I got involved with Farm Bureau at a very young age, very young anymore. When I was 18, I bought a car and I needed car insurance. And so I called the rural agent and I got started with him at that time, and I've been with rural ever since. He started the REAP program, I'm not sure what year, but I was number 175, and that's a very low number. About 20 years ago or so, they called me to be nominated to go on the board, and I accepted, and I was voted in, and I've been on the board ever since. In the last 2 years, I've been president.
From 1953 to 1988, the Wisconsin Farm Bureau Federation operated The Clearing, a 120-acre cultural center located at Ellison Bay on the rugged north shore of Door County. The center had been owned by world-known landscape artist Jens Jensen and had been used as a site of study for architecture and also a place where people could go to be close to the wilderness. Following Jensen's death, the Clearing Board of Directors selected Farm Bureau over the Audubon Society to operate the clearing. The decision was made on the premise that the center would be used as a place to study art, nature, and conservation. The clearing was used for many Farm Bureau retreats and conferences.
Over the years, I went to a lot of Farm Bureau annual meetings, and when they started with the Leopold Award, I would listen pretty intently to that, as conservation has always been a special interest of mine. And after the award was presented 3 or 4 times or thereabouts, I just kind of thought to myself, you know, maybe that's something that I should apply for and see if I could get. And on the second try, we were the recipient of the award, and I thought, well, you know, the big deal of it would be actually receiving the award, and that was a great experience. But the truly big experience is all the doors that it opened after the presentation to talk to people and be able to tell farm groups about my conservation experience. This sign is something I kind of found by chance when I was cleaning out a particular older building on the farm. And Bert Hol's my grandfather. And I didn't know this sign existed until 6-8 years ago when I happened to find it cleaning out this shed. And I thought, whoa, this is pretty impressive. So my grandfather had 5 sons and a daughter. 3 of those sons were farmers. And I think the sign was probably a membership incentive at some point in time. To see his name on this sign was something that it just exploded on me, and I said, I'm going to do whatever I have to keep this sign.
One that I was always really proud of and was really early in my career and really is kind of lost in history is the revisions to the eminent domain law. And when I started out, the law at that time was very unfavorable to landowners. Basically, the government, whether it was for highways or whatever purposes, could take their land, and they weren't really being treated fairly. And we totally flipped that law, and we really had, again, one of the leading eminent domain laws in the country that gave landowners a lot more protection and rights.
The February 1957 meeting of the Board of Directors was the first meeting held in the new office building of the Federation and its affiliates on the south side of Madison. The building later became the headquarters for the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. Official dedication of the new home of the Wisconsin Farm Bureau Federation took place on June 9, 1957. A flagpole and stone in front of the building was dedicated to the farm youth of Wisconsin who served in the armed services. Percy S. Hardeman was chosen as the Federation's new president in 1959, as membership hovered around 30,000 families. With the assistance from the University of Wisconsin, Farm Bureau developed a pork marketing program and operated a hog operation near Belmont. A program known as PMR, Production Marketing Research, was started. The program, designed to market about 150 hogs a week, was the first of its kind in the United States. Its quality trademark, More Lean, gave the cooperative and Farm Bureau nationwide publicity for its lean and long carcasses.
Hi, I'm Lauren Costello from Manitowoc County Farm Bureau. I joined Farm Bureau to meet more people in the agriculture community and be an advocate for agriculture. Happy 100 years, Wisconsin Farm Bureau.
Happy 100 years, Farm Bureau. The reason we got involved in Farm Bureau, it started out as young farmers, and we enjoyed it so much. And it really helped us as a couple and as beginning farmers to see what farming is all about. And we appreciate it, and that's why we became involved in Farm Bureau.
Happy anniversary.
Well, one of the biggest advantages of belonging to Farm Bureau is the fact that you get to talk to politicians who actually set policy that really governs how you do your daily things. You know, how you get taxed and everything like that, and it just gives you that opportunity to get involved. I enjoy politics, I enjoy being involved, and Farm Bureau really gives me that avenue to make that happen.
In the spring of 1964, the face of Farm Bureau in the countryside received a new look. The organization had ordered membership signs, which featured a stop sign on the backside to remind farmers that they should stop before proceeding from the farm gate, and the phrase Farm Bureau member on the front side to tell passers-by that this farmer was part of the voice of agriculture in the state of Wisconsin. To provide for the future appropriately reflected the story of Farm Bureau in 1969. This was the golden anniversary for both the Wisconsin and American Farm Bureaus. Membership reached 1,796,000 families on the national level, with more than 27,000 such memberships in the state of Wisconsin. Farm Bureau became the largest farm organization in the country and boasted that its membership totaled more than twice the number of farmers belonging to all other general farm organizations. Nelian Nelson of Argyle was elected president at the 50th annual meeting. To help farmers sell their products, the Farm Bureau started a commodity exchange program.
One main figure in Farm Bureau in Fond du Lac County has been Trayton Greenfield, and he was rounds for many years signing up members, and if you didn't pay your dues, a little visit from Trayton every year when he drove on the yard. Oh, I must not have paid my dues because Trayton's here, and we willingly always gave him the check again, but I give him a lot of credit because he was persistent and he got a lot of people signed up again because of that.
Hi, I'm Sally Turpin, a member of the Juneau County Farm Bureau and the District 5 representative on the State YFA Committee. I've really enjoyed my involvement on the State YFA Committee so far. I've gotten to meet a lot of awesome people, as well as just getting to know people in my district better and getting newer members involved in activities.
I had an interesting experience flying out from Milwaukee one morning. I sat down on my seat, and a few minutes later, Senator Cole sat down beside me. So I got to sit next to Senator Cole the whole 2 hours, and I wasn't going to stay silent the whole time. I did respect his nap time, and then he was reading his material on his bucks. And after he was done with that, he was open to talking, and we solved half the world's problems in that last hour of the plane ride. And when I got into his office later the next day, he knew my name.
Kind of like Farm Bureau, where we're so rooted in that family and that core. And this was the time when, in my life, where I was just like, you know what, this is where I belong. It wasn't like, it was not, I just knew in my heart and in my gut, like, you know what, this is time. And that's already been 10 years. And since my dad had those health challenges, and I've been full-time on the farm now over 5 years. And you know, being able to farm with your family, it poses challenges. But I wouldn't trade farming with my brother for the world. Working with him every day is by far my greatest joy. Being able to work next to somebody that I looked up to. Being able to live out what our dad started. My brother and I are third generation, and even watching how our farm has changed in my lifetime, that makes me proud. There was one key sentence that my brother said that I'll never forget, and what made my decision why I knew I belonged there and why I knew I needed to be farming with him was after my dad had a stroke. We looked at each other and we're like, okay, either we're gonna do this or we're not. And he's like, all I know is I want to keep farming and I can't do it without you.
Happy 100 Farm Bureau.
Happy 100th from Fond du Lac County.
Happy 100th anniversary, Farm Bureau.